This is the change. This is my favorite one, the one I'm actually excited about, the one that has the most potential.
There is nowhere left to go but up.
What's going on, YouTube? Dannydecks here. Today we got patch 3.0 notes. So I had to work today. It was a little bit late to the jump for my reaction to the patch notes, but I think that's fine. And I'll go over what I liked and what I disliked. But first off, patch notes. So they changed Sion. Sion's now a 1-6, and then he turns into an 8-6 and an 8-4 respectively. I don't think this is too much of a big change to Sion. It's just going to be, you know, a little bit less damage that he's dealing. Sion wasn't seeing in a ton of super high competitive decks lately, so it seems a little bit odd to nerf him, but I do understand. Sion was pretty threatening, so overall, probably a good change. Just not sure if it was needed at the moment. However, if they're going to continue to make discard synergies and stuff, it could make Sion a little bit too strong. So overall, this is an okay change with me. It doesn't bug me. I really don't like facing Sion, so works out. Ashe, you frostbitten 5 enemies, turns to you frostbitten 4 enemies. So this is a good change for Ashe. It's positive direction for her. However, I think Ashe's problem is a lot deeper than that. I think Frostbite as a mechanic is just a little bit weak. Yes, it's good, except the problem with Frostbite is it doesn't actually remove anything on its own. So a lot of the cards are using the Frostbite stuff is more like a stun, basically, you know, like concussive palm style things, and eventually you do get overwhelmed if you don't finish out the game. You only get one crystalline arrow with Ashe, and you also, she just has weak stats. You know, 3 health is not very good, and her ability you need to attack in to use. It's not often that you're attacking in and they have 1 unit, right? So if they have multiple units, they can just slowly chip down your Ashe, if not just outright kill it. So I think Ashe's biggest problem was being able to attack, and she needs to attack to activate her ability. So overall, good change for Ashe. I like Ashe. She's a cool character, fun champion to play, but I don't know if this is going to bring Ashe back into the meta. I hope it does, but I think it's very unlikely. So Trundle. Trundle got a buff of +1 health. I don't know how I feel about this, man. So I thought Trundle was perfectly fine as he was. He was sane play. Most of the time you play Field of Rush and he's a 10-10 anyway, so this buff is irrelevant. A little bit scary, honestly. I don't know if the meta is slow enough for Trundle. Like turn 5, most of the time you're already really low, and Trundle's just 1 unit and they just go wide on you anyways. So it's a tricky one. This might be too much. 6 health on a regeneration unit is just massive, so it might just end up being an overbuff. I know it sounds weird because they're just reverting him to his original form, but I'm a little bit worried about this one, honestly. I really don't, like, as much as I want to see different stuff, I really don't want to see Trundle just take over the meta again, because Trundle's kind of annoying, and at 6 HP, removal is really bad in this game, so it's going to be tough to deal with a regenning Trundle at 6, so see how that goes. Anivia. Anivia goes from 2-4 to 3-5 and 3-5 to 4-6. So this is an interesting one. Anivia's problem was never really her stat line. I mean, you technically want the card to die anyway, so you can revive it. But this is still a buff, and buffs are good for cards that are underplayed. I don't think this solves Anivia's issue, where she needs to get to 10 mana to be revived, and at the moment, I don't know how many of my games ever go to 10 mana. It's pretty rare. Ultimately, though, it does help the archetype of, like, reviving her. So her being a 4-6 means she's going to get prioritized over Rekindler, and it also gives you more options when building that type of deck where you want to do, like, the zombie Anivia, because now you can pick different units, and you don't have to worry about those units being revived over Anivia. So I think it's a positive change. It's good. I just don't think it's going to really affect anything, honestly. Kindred. 5 cost, 4-4 goes to 4 cost, 4-3. Kindred's an interesting one. I made a video on Kindred and why Kindred's bad. This literally addresses none of Kindred's issues. I guess she comes down earlier. The problem is, however, all of the existing things that were wrong with Kindred are still existing and they're still bad. And 3 health, I mean, Caitlyn's a 3-3 with quick attack for 3. Why couldn't Kindred just be a 4-4 quick attack for 4? That would have been significantly better. At 3 health, she just dies to get excited. She dies to so many more things. Like, yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, dealing 4 damage is significantly harder than dealing 3. So hopefully Kindred becomes viable. I personally don't see it. I think it's a lot of hopium if you really want to get this card going. None of the problems are fixed. It just comes down a turn earlier to disappoint you. Maokai, effect triggers on playing another ally. Effect triggers on summoning. So this is basically just like a QOL for Maokai. It's like a quality of life. Outside of stuff like, I guess like Vile Feast, or if you're going to be playing him in like a non-deep deck, like you could probably play like a Shadow Isle Sacrifice deck, and that's going to be relevant. But I think it should have worked like this the whole time, honestly. It's kind of cool. It gives Maokai a way to generate, some blockers without needing units. But not a big deal, really. I guess the most notable thing is Vile Feast will now summon his Sapling, which is cool. I guess if you were playing like some sort of janky Mistwraith Maokai, you could like cast the Mistwraith at burst speed and generate 2 burst speed blockers. But yeah, ultimately, not a big change, but it is quality of life, and I think this card should have been like this to begin with. Darius going from a 6-5 to a 6-6 and then a 10-5. Sorry, it should have been a 10-6. They corrected all these typos and they didn't correct this one. I'm pretty sure Darius is a 10-6 and he goes to a 10-7 now. Nonetheless, so Darius is an interesting one. He's very vanilla, and I think he should have just got reworked. I don't know why they went with the stat line push. Darius is a very weird unit because he's in an archetype I hate. I absolutely hate aggro. It's so annoying. I think it's low skill. And yes, there's skill. There's skill in everything you play. Aggro definitely gets very punished if you make misplays, and they have this, fine line that they gotta walk, sure. However, in an archetype that you literally flip a coin if you draw cards or your opponent draws poorly, like, it feels dumb. And this card is pushed right into that. So I don't think this is going to change too much for Darius. Ultimately, Sion still feels better. The reason Sion feels better to me is because Sion has the threat of coming back, right? Darius, you kill him once, he's dead. 7 health, though, is going to be pretty difficult to deal with, and I am a little fearful that if this actually is effective and Darius is in the meta, it's going to be really obnoxious. Like, having a guy come down on 6 as a 10-7 overwhelm, it's boring design, and I think he should have been reworked. He could have done so much stuff. He could have cleaved, like, hit adjacent units. He could have put bleeds and the person takes damage over time or something. Whatever the case, kill injured units at the end of turn, whatever. Like, Darius could have done some cool shit and they could have like reworked this card properly, but instead they just slapped 1 HP on him, nerfed 2 attack from Sion, and called them different, but really they seem to serve the same purpose to me, which is just a giant overwhelm beater. And I still think Sion's going to do it better, because Sion, you're afraid to kill. Darius, you're not. So they drop Darius, you kill him, and then they're like shit. Whereas Sion, they drop Sion, you have to kill him twice, which is pretty scary, especially since the second time he rallies. You gotta really think about Sion killing, whereas Darius, you don't gotta think at all. You just kill him, he's just a vanilla beater. So, yeah. Ultimately, it's a card that's not played. Getting a buff to make it played is always a good thing. I just hope it doesn't end up, prevalent in the meta, because I just hate this type of card. I think it's really lazy, and it's pretty oppressive if done properly, too, right? So, yeah. Diana, Nightfall, give me Challenger this round. Change to Nightfall, or when you activate another Nightfall, give me Challenger this round. So this is a really good change for Diana. One of the main problems with Diana is, like, she only gets that Challenger once, and Challenger with Quick Attack is a very dangerous combo, but she's a 2-drop. I mean, she's a 2-2 or a 3-3. She has to get buffed with Nightfall. Nightfall's not particularly strong. Will this make Diana viable? Unlikely, honestly. I think Nightfall, the problem with Nightfall is there's just not enough supporting cards that are good. Like, you don't want to play a bunch of shit cards just so you can have your Diana get killed by Mystic Shot anyways. So I don't think this is going to make Diana good, but this is a good change for her, and she should have been printed this way. I don't understand why she was never released like this, but nonetheless, yeah, this is cool. I like Diana. I hope she's relevant. I would like to make a Diana deck one day. This is actually a huge change. So Xerath going from 3-3 to 3-4, and then 4-4 to 4-5. I don't know how I feel about this. I like Xerath, actually. Xerath's cool. I just feel like him being a 3-3 was very balanced, and getting that 4th point of health is a little bit scary, because Xerath's a unit that needs to sit on the board. However, when he sits on the board, he does very dangerous things. So giving him that extra point of health makes it very hard to remove Xerath as opposed to 3 health. And this is almost like the reverse Kindred problem. Like, if they had given Kindred the 4th point of health and made her a 4-4, she would be significantly better. But taking that health point away, I don't man, making like 3 health is it sucks. Like so much stuff does 3 health. 3 health is like, you know, whatever. 4 health though. 4 health is very hard to deal with. At least not in one fell swoop. So this is a definite buff for Xerath. Xerath's going to be a lot more difficult to remove. So, you know, good on Xerath, but hopefully it's not too much because I felt like at 3-3 Xerath was actually perfectly fine. The problem lay more in the landmark archetype as well as how fast the game's going, right? So it's not that Xerath was bad, it's just that the game is just, it's all aggro. And regardless of how you want to call it, every deck is winning pre-turn 10. Like, not even, they're like winning on 7s and 8s. Like, everything is aggro nowadays, and that's what Xerath's problem really was, is he didn't have time to develop his landmarks and have his synergies going. He was just dying to shit, like Yordle in Arms, turn 5, you're dead. Ari Kennen, you know, turn 5-6, you're dead. Like, Elise Spider aggro, you're just dead. What else is big in the meta right now? Good. Like the Draven decks, literally every Draven, Rumble, that stuff, you're dying too fast, and I think that was Xerath's problem more than his HP, honestly. He's a little bit of a slower card. Will this make him viable? Maybe, actually. I mean, Xerath might potentially slow down the meta. No cap on that. Because that extra point of health makes him resilient. He'll start being able to kill multiple units at a time and reduce aggro. My only thing is, like, that's on turn 4. On turn 4, you've already lost a ton of health. I'm losing, like, 6 health on turn 2 constantly in the meta. So, by turn 4, you know, you might be too low for him to catch you up. But maybe. This might be good. This might be good. It might be too strong, but it's definitely an interesting change. And this is probably the most impactful one I think we've seen so far. Ability now triggers on destroying landmarks. This is a nerf. This is one of those like nerfs that doesn't really matter, honestly. So, basically what it's saying here is when Xerath used to get to his level 3, which is like never, he would start the round, deal 5 to your Nexus. Now but he would lose his ability. He would lose his initial ability where when you break a landmark, he kills something. Now they're giving him back the ability in his ascended form or whatever, his ultimate level 3, but they're taking away his round start, just deal 5 straight up. I think that's kind of a nerf, because by the time you get Xerath to ascended, like how much health they really have, it's unlikely they're going to be at 20. So you just really, like, you know, 2 turns from killing them. And with this, now you have to have a whole bunch of landmarks. And if you're playing with a Xer, like, you're going to have 0 landmarks because you're going to get the Emperor's deck. So this is basically, like, this is a nerf. But it's one of those nerfs that doesn't... I don't think this is going to matter. Like, honestly, I don't think Mono Shurima is going to be a thing. It might be, who knows, right? Anything's possible, especially in the future. And if that does ever become a thing, then this is definitely a nerf to level 3. However, he's getting buffed in the forms that really matter, and ultimately Xerath could be a beast. Followers, spells, landmarks. Your multi-region units cost 1 less. The first multi-region unit you play each round costs 1 less. So they changed Mayor so that Mayor only discounts the first card per turn. This is a positive change for Mayor. I really think in the current meta, like, yes, people were puking their hand out with the Mayor on the board, sure. Especially when you double and triple up Mayor. Well, you never really get to triple Mayor. I've never had that dream. But I've had 2 Mayors on the board, and it gets pretty wild. Thing is, you have limited board space. Your deck is already going wide. Most of the time, what you're really using your Mayor for is to find a region. At least in the current decks that I see Mayor in. What I mean by that is there's Yordle in Arms, and there's the Bandle Tree. Those are the 2 major decks that Mayor is really being played in the meta, at least that I've encountered in the last week or so in Masters Rank North America. This doesn't really affect that at all. So they'll play the Mayor, and they're looking for a card that will, you know, give them their 4 out of 4 for the Yordles in Arms, or, you know, to get an extra value unit on the board. And obviously Bandle Tree is looking for a region they haven't played yet. So good change. It'll stop the insane swarm potential of this card, but I don't think this card should not see play anymore because of that. So I think this card's still going to be in a perfectly fine place. I think it doesn't really change the way that he's currently being played, at least not by a huge amount. Curious Shellfolk goes from a 4-6 to a 4-4. I'm happy to see that she got nerfed. However, if it was up to me, this card would just get removed. This card is just, it's so obnoxious. I don't think this changes anything. So the problem here is, anything that's going to deal 4 most of the time deals 6 anyways. Like it's not like you magically are going to be able to kill it now. Like if it had 3 health, sure, there's a lot of removal that potentially does 3, but 4 is like super exclusive. 4 is that health stat where it's kind of tricky to kill the unit. I mean, any nerf to Shellfolk, I'm happy. I think this card is obnoxious. It's just stupid. I would have liked to see it reworked or give your cards fleeting. The cards it steals should be fleeting maybe, or maybe only do it once per turn Mayor style. Turning it into a 4/4, I don't think that should stop it from seeing play. Anytime it sees play, like, the card just gets value the turn you play it most of the time anyways, right? Like, even if you're just playing, like, 2 trinket trades, it still just generates you a shitload of otterpusses, and sure, she might not get to prank your otterpusses, but you're still getting 4 pranks, which basically kills the opponent's hand. It's pretty busted. Yeah, overall, glad to see it got nerfed. Not enough, in my opinion. I hope this card is just... I want it gone. I want this card out of the game completely. It's just so stupid. And at 4 health, I don't think it's still going to be hard to remove. Like, it's not easy to remove 4 health targets, and that's that. And you don't put this in combat, so it's not like it's going to just attack into you or block unless you force it to because you're overwhelming them, but at that point you've probably already won anyways. I would love this card to go to like 4/3 or have an actual change, like, you know, the cards are fleeting or once per turn or deleted from existence. Lecturing Yordle. When I'm summoned or attack, create a fleeting poison dart in hand. Attack, create a fleeting poison dart. So this card was kind of... it's a weird one. His stats are good, and his effect when he came down was really good. However, I think a huge missight a lot of people had was, like, playing this right on 4, depending on the type of deck you're playing, you often didn't even have mana to play that first dart. So, I don't think this is going to stop him from seeing play. It's definitely a huge nerf to the card, though, because now you're forcing it in danger in order for you to get any sort of real value out of him. It's a tricky one. I think it's a good nerf overall. This card is a little bit obnoxious. I mean, 4 mana, 3/5 that gives you poison darts for free is pretty damn strong. So, I think I would have preferred to see it go to, like, I don't know, like a 3/3, keep its effect, and, like, that's totally fair. Like, a 3/3 for 3 is a legit stat line, right? Like, that's pretty much the 3 mana stat line, and he still keeps his dart. So you could have been like a 3/3 for 3 with his old effect, so then you're getting that 4th point of value with the dart, and then every other dart beyond that. But nonetheless, I'm glad to see this card nerfed. I'm not a huge fan of this card. Yeah, outside of Teemo archetypes, because I like the puff cap stuff, I'm glad to see this gone. Hopefully it just never comes back. Deal 5 to a unit, plunder I cost 3 less. So basically this is just getting changed from costing 3 to costing 4. Not a huge fan of this change. This is a change that I really dislike. I thought Monster Harpoon was a really good card, and one of the only removals in this whole game that was legit. Like, all of the other removal in this game, so, like, my problem is I come from Magic, and in Magic you pay 4 mana and you wipe the board. And yes, we have the spell mana system, so you can't be wiping the board on turn 3, for example, if you bank some mana. However, you can't wipe the board ever. Like, you have to wait till turn 9, or, you know, 6 at the latest if you bank 3 on 5 in Ruination. So, removal is basically, you know, 1 mana, deal 1 damage. Units, however, they outscale removal, like, so hard. So it's kind of like removal really doesn't do that much in this game, which kind of sucks. You're always at a mana disadvantage when you're playing removal. I think that's the biggest problem with control. So a 1 mana unit is going to have 2 to 3 health most of the time. Sure, some of them have 1 health, then you're going 1-1, right? Group shot, the poison dart move, it's just called poison dart, right? Yeah, poison dart. Those all deal 1, so yeah, sure, it's going 1-1, but most of the time, you can't actually remove a 1-drop with a 1 mana removal card. Same with a 2-drop. If a 2-drop has 3 health, which is pretty common, your Mystic Shots or, well, Pokestick can't get it, but Pokestick's a little bit different because Pokestick is like a, it's like a cantrip, it cycles itself, so you wouldn't expect it to do 2. But nonetheless, Mystic Shot, 2 mana, deal 2 damage, doesn't kill 2/3s, and 2/3s are a 2 mana card, and so on. You scale it up, right? 3/4s, Vanguards, Dragon Dude, and etc. can't kill them. 3 to 3, 4 mana, you get 4 health to 5 health, and same sort of idea. There's obviously exceptions, something like Ravenous Flock, but the difference is Ravenous Flock is often 2 cards to deal 4 or 5 or whatever it is. So you end up with a card disadvantage when you're flocking. There's always going to be exceptions, like, if you have like a TF red card and then you can flock, then it's like, not that bad of a trade. But overall, removal is extremely weak in this game, in my opinion. The removal cards are almost always a mana disadvantage. Units, if you had a handful of removal and they have a handful of units, they're probably going to beat you. Board wipes are shit, and stuff like that. There's no good board wipes in the game. Removal's 1 mana, 1 damage. Units are more than 1 health to 1 mana, so yeah, I would like to see better removal, and removing actual good removal out of the game feels kind of bad. Like making this a 4, but it's still above the budget at 5 mana or 4 mana deal 5. So I guess it's not terrible. I thought this card was great, and this is one of the properly done removals in my opinion. I think this was good, and it really was helpful, but let's just nerf it anyways. It's probably because they want you to not be able to just use spell mana to shoot this card off, but like, I don't know. This seems a bit dumb, quite honestly. It feels like when they made these, they thought that GP Sejuani was just broken and they needed to do something to the deck, and they didn't want to do anything crazy. And I don't think this hurts that deck all that much, quite honestly. It'll do something. Sure, 1 mana is always going to matter, but I don't think this is the way to go if you want to nerf that deck personally, because this just nerfs one of the only good removal spells in the game. It That Stairs play, obliterate all landmarks, or deal 2, and they basically changed it so that it deals 3 to all other units. This is actually really good. One thing to note, this is both sides, so this is almost like it hits your units too. I don't know. I mean, this card's basically still probably unplayable, quite honestly. There's very few fringe scenarios where you play this, but the meta is so fast at the moment that getting to turn 8 is rare. And even if you do get to turn 8 and they manage to play that and wipe your board, they're going to be so low. It's one of those situations where this feels like a win more in the current meta. It's either they weren't low enough and then this kills your board, and it didn't matter because you weren't going to win that game anyways. They're still at 15 health or whatever, and it's turn 8. Like, your deck is playing a bunch of 1 and 2 drops, like, you're not going to beat them. Or they play it on turn 8, they kill their board, they're at 5 health or less, and you just kill them with sort of burn or a loop. Overall, good change. It makes this card better, and I mean, dealing 3 is huge. This kills Kindred now. Lol, Kindred. I mean, it's a good change. Card wasn't very good to begin with, so this just makes it better, and anything that makes bad cards better is good, in my opinion. Voices of the Old One. So they just changed this from the top 4 to the top 5 cards in your deck. This isn't really going to change much. You may draw an extra card from it occasionally. I guess 20% of the time. I don't think it works like that. Well, whatever the case, this is basically no change. If you were playing this card, you're still going to play this card. If you weren't playing this card, you're still not going to play this card. This is the change. This is my favorite one, the one I'm actually excited about, the one that has the most potential, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, Xerath gaining 1 health, maybe landmarks will be good, but there's not that many good landmarks, and the landmark deck is already like whatever. But Iceborn Legacy, going from slow to burst, this is the most fun change. If it doesn't become competitively viable, this one is the most fun and interesting. At slow speed, you could never use this on your spiders or anything really, because you'd have to get the opponent to tap out, and it was a meme. At burst speed, worst case, this is a combat trick, an overpriced combat trick, which is amazing. I'm thinking you can play this in all kinds of stuff. I'm sure everyone's already excited and theory crafted, but you got Marauders, you got Elise Spiders, you got like Poros. You can do it with the elusive Poro, and you just buff it really big and play like 4 Poro cannon or 3 Poro cannons, stuff like that. There's all kinds of other ones. Sand Soldiers, Aurelia Blades. I don't think Sand Soldiers, Aurelia Blades will be as good. Mist Wraiths. Oh my god. I might try a Mist Wraith deck with this, actually, now that I think about that, because basically Shadow Isles Mist Wraiths is already an Allegiance deck, so you're basically playing all Shadow Isles cards. You can just run 37 Shadow Isles cards and 3 Iceborn Legacy as your off card, and that might actually work out pretty good. But ultimately, this is the coolest change. It's the most interesting change. It might not be the best, but it is definitely the most interesting, and I have no clue why this card was slow speed for the longest time. Rimetusk Shaman goes from 3-3 to 3-4. Basically, still unplayable. It needs at least 5 health, in my opinion, to be viable. This card needs to sit on the board to do anything. It has potential, especially with Ashe being buffed and all that, but 3-4 is just not enough for 5 mana. Like, you're paying 5 mana for a card you don't want to put into combat ever, and it needs to sit on the board for multiple rounds. Not good. I think this needed at least another point of health, or even make it like, I think 4-5 might make it. I think 3-5's fine, or even 4-4 could be better. It's just, it feels really weak. 3 attack isn't particularly good for 5. And 4 health isn't particularly good for 5. So it just has a shit stat line, and its effect is strong, sure, but it's not that good. Poro Herder. When I'm summoned, draw Poro if you have a Poro ally, and when I'm summoned, if you behold a Poro, draw a Poro ally. So basically, the difference is you had to have a Poro on the field to get the draw effect before. Now, as long as you have one in your hand, you get it. I don't think this is a big difference. Honestly, this deck never struggled with getting Poros in hand or having Poros on the board. So this is effectively a no change, but it is a good change, right? Like, this makes the card better, I suppose. And Poros are already kind of interesting. Poros are not bad. I lost to Poros this morning, actually. Some dude had like 250 LP in Masters, and he beat me with a Poro deck. Pretty obnoxious, honestly. I'm not sure if he high rolled or not, but he got 5 Poro snacks in that game, and seems like a high roll, but maybe not. It's not that crazy to think about. Nonetheless, this is a buff to Poros. It's a slight buff, but still a buff. Chump Whump goes from 4-3 to 4-4. So back in the day, Chump Whump used to be good, and he was a 4-mana 4-4. Hopefully this returns him to his glory days, because this card was literally unplayable. Even if you played him in like a Teemo deck, you just 4-mana 4-3 was just like, it's shit. And that's what I think Kindred's gonna have that same problem. Basically 3 health, it dies to everything. This thing gets traded in with 2 drops. You're playing your Chump Whump and you're just losing it to a 2 drop. And even in cases like against Sejuani Gangplank, you're losing it to a 1 drop. Feels real bad. 4 health should help this card be a lot more viable, and I think this may actually replace the Poison Dart man. I don't know, what the heck's his name? Lecturing Yordle. Yeah, this will probably replace Lecturing Yordle in Teemo decks now, because Lecturing Yordle got nerfed, this guy got buffed. And ultimately, this guy gives you more darts, especially now, or more puff caps, especially now that you don't get the free dart. So, I like this. This is cool. Will he be good outside of puff caps? Actually, maybe. You never know. This could be good in some sort of fringe aggro deck, right? Like, 10 puff caps is not nothing. Probably averages out to 1 to 2 damage a game. So, could be good. It's a 4-4 that deals 2 over the course of a couple turns. We'll have to see, but this will definitely probably see way more play in a Teemo deck. It really wasn't seeing much play. This is probably now an auto 3-of for Teemo. Ruined Rex goes from 3-3 to 4-4. Effect can now trigger up to 6 times instead of 5. The effect is irrelevant. I don't think I've ever seen this guy even get to 5, so I don't know how you're going to get to 6. That's drawing 6 cards in a turn. That seems absurd. While also having mana to play him after. I mean, you'd have to do like the TF signature spell like 3 times or something, like the turn prior, to really get this going off. And then you just discard your whole hand anyway, so it's stupid. Okay, off topic. Basically, good change. I don't know. This card is just, it's just kind of wonky. It's not that good. I think it needs to have like a higher baseline if you really want this to be good, honestly. Starting at 1, like maybe it should just always do 2 and then scale up. Like having 2 barrages would make this card really good. So like if you just drew for the turn and, you know, that's your 1 card, and then you play Ruined Rex and he still shoots 2 barrages, that would probably make it significantly better. So I don't know that this is going to make him playable. But, I mean, a buff is a buff, and he's got 4 health now, so 4 health is the magic number. Coral Creatures goes from a 1-2 to a 1-3. 1-3s for 2, I don't know, man. I mean, it's technically for 1 because you attune. I don't think this is really going to change this card too much. It just becomes a slightly better blocker, I guess, against aggro, but this card doesn't really see much play. It might have some sort of play now in, like, a Nami deck, especially since Nami's only with the TF at the moment, and that deck seemed to take a bit of a hit with the Shellfolk nerf. I don't know if y'all ever play Coral Creatures, honestly. This is kind of like a negligible nerf, or buff, I mean, but a buff nonetheless. Ascended's Rise goes from 7 to 6. So, seems like they really want this Mono Shurima to go off. This is actually a pretty big buff. You play this on turn 3, technically. Well, it's unlikely you would have, like, you could bank 3 mana, play a Zir on 3, and then play this and level your Zir. But essentially, basically, all you need is 3 mana, 3 spell mana, and then 3 of any regular mana, and you can level up your allies. So that's actually pretty good for the Mono Shurima deck. You could easily level your Renekton's now, or any cards that were a little bit more difficult to level. 6 mana is way more manageable than 7, and this will help, I guess, if they even play it. I don't know, this might just be a non-change, but nonetheless, buffs to cards that weren't played are always a good thing, so they might get played and shake up the meta, but I don't see it. Corina goes from 6-6 to 8-8. This does absolutely nothing. It makes her a little bit bigger, but you're not playing Corina for her stats to begin with. You're playing her for her effect, and nobody's playing her at all anyways. I don't think giving her 2-2 is going to make her magically good. So if you were going to play Corina, you were already going to play Corina, and it didn't matter about her stats, right? Like, you played her for her effect. She could have basically been like a 3-3. And you would just play her because her effect is super powerful if you build the proper deck around it. Still, a buff to a card that doesn't get played is good. So, you know, this is in the right direction. This guy gets to be a 3-3, can now create cards outside of your deck's regions. I don't like this. Not that I don't like his stats, this card isn't played, but I'm not a fan of random. Like, controlled random is good, but I think that, random is really unhealthy. Now, I don't see this ever getting played in a competitive format, so it's not really a big deal because, like I said, he's not going to ever be competitive. But let's just say he one day becomes a competitive card. The random abilities just feel they're dumb. You know, that's for Hearthstone, not for us here. And I'm not a fan of the manifest. At least manifesting is got some parameters to it. The one I do like, I like Invoke, right? Like, Invoke has a very limited card pool. You're very aware of what you're getting. Yes, there's high rolls. Yes, there's low rolls. But when you just do random, it just feels bad because random is like, it could be anything. You could get, you know, a 1 to a 10 and everywhere in between. You lose games or win games on it. It just, I absolutely hate random. You already have to deal with drawing cards randomly. Now, you know, cards that are just getting random effects, I think it's bad and it's unhealthy. And the larger the card pool grows, the more variance that the random effect will be. So even in the case of like the Yordles manifesting, like Concologist, for example, yeah, you have a pretty good idea of what Concologist is going to get you. There's only so many cards, but as the card pool grows, there's going to be really high and really low rolls. I mean, currently, I've already got a ton, like, you guys have experienced it too, I'm sure, where you get 3 options that are dog shit, and other times you play them and you get 3 options that are the nuts. And the variance, I hate it. I really would hope that they tone out, they chill out on random, because random is not fun. Random really just kills your game competitively, and it makes it a coin flip, and nobody wants to play for coin flips. At least I don't. Buried Sundisk. Start a game, draw 1 of me, and if all of your cards are Shuriman. Okay, nothing changed. Oh, okay, so basically this auto-summons Sundisk now, which is great. So auto-summoning the Sundisk, huge. Basically, a big problem you had with the Sundisk archetype was you didn't get a turn 1 play. So now you get a turn 1 play with the Sundisk. It automatically goes on the board. I think this is a good, solid change, and this kind of fits the theme of what they're doing and pushing the Ascended stuff. Yeah, good change, right? Buried Sundisk, now Mono Shurima actually has the ability to play on turn 1. And they have a pretty decent 1-drop in the 3-1 that would, you know, play aggressive or defend. And so this is awesome. I tried playing Mono Shurima a whole bunch, and when you're playing against a lot of aggro decks, losing your turn 1 play is pretty bad. So there were often times where I'd be playing Mono Shurima, and I wouldn't even play Sundisk on 1 because I couldn't afford to. If you play Sundisk on 1, you basically lose the game. So having it come out for free makes perfect sense. Should have done this the entire time. I don't know what they were thinking, but I'm glad they got their shit together because this is legit. Uganse goes to 6 mana. A lot of people think this is going to be a big change. I don't think it's a really big change, to be honest. I mean, it's a step in the right direction. Anytime removal is getting buffed, I'm happy. I love removal. I want removal to be cheap. I want you to actually have to think when you play and not just puke onto the board. Vengeance going to 6 is good. Ultimately, I don't know how much it's going to change. People use this whole, like, you can bank 3 mana and then kill their Wounded White Flame on 3. That's not really a good play, like, honestly. You're spending 6 mana to kill a 3 mana unit that hasn't had anything, you know, dumped into it yet. But nonetheless, this is good. Step in the right direction. Vengeance did feel a little bit heavy at 7. At 6, it should feel a lot better. I like that they're keeping it at 6 because it still interacts with like Jason, Lux, and that keeps that synergies in check. This could probably go to 5, honestly, and still be balanced. But the problem with this going to 5 is it would show like every other removal would be so trash compared to it that they couldn't do that. So this just gets the mech tag or the tech tag, whatever tag it is. Nothing big here. This still won't see play. It's unlikely it will, at least. Hidden Pathways goes from 5 to 6. Now, this is a pretty big nerf. I actually thought Hidden Pathways was good. I think the card draw is a little bit lacking in a lot of regions, and having regions that give you good card draw effects is pretty important. So it feels a little bit bad that this particular one got nerfed. I don't think Hidden Pathways was a problem. Now it's just more in line, right? Costs 2 less, so it's going to cost 4 instead of 3. I mean, that's technically the same as like Salvage and the other thing. Feels dumb, honestly. It's like you might as well just avoid having to deal with the create 2 cards and just run like a Salvage or Whispered Words if you're in those regions. Overall, not a huge fan of this. This forces you, like, you could used to be able to just pick this card up and have draw, and even 2 cards at 5, although it feels bad, isn't that bad. But at 6 mana, I don't want to say this card's dead. It's definitely not dead. 4 mana draw 2 is always legit, but I feel like this was unnecessary, and not a fan of this. I think card draw, you want to draw cards, man. You want to have shit in your hand. I think cards that create cards are bad because then you end up with, like, you know, the Vandal City where they never run out of stuff and they haven't drawn a card all game. But this is a little bit different than that. This synergizes with all the card draw effects, and it can go in decks that aren't trying to do Vandal City stuff but just splash Vandal City. So my overall take on it is I think nothing's changing. This doesn't change the meta. Pantheon's not touched. Ari Kennen's not touched. Bandle got a little bit touched, but the Bandle stuff that got touched isn't really in the meta at the moment in a big way. Like, Bandle Tree doesn't care if its Mayor only works once, it just wants to generate a unit. The Lulu Fizz deck, the Yordle and Arms, doesn't really care about the nerfs to Bandle, so they're still going to be there. Draven and Rumble, Aggro Cheese is still there. Elise Spider Cheese is still there. None of that stuff got changed, and none of that stuff looks like it's really taking any sort of hit. So I don't think this patch was overall a success because I don't see it changing the meta. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my take. If you want to climb the ladder, play Pantheon, play Ari Kennen. Those are going to be your best bets on climbing ranks right now, especially while people are messing around with stuff that's probably ultimately not going to work. That's it. A little bit disappointed. They, in my opinion, dropped the ball. They could have done better stuff here. They could have dealt with things. Apparently, they were on, you know, Christmas vacation, or sorry, you know, holiday season. So this was pre-done, and I wish they would have just took another week. Like, take another week and fix it. But this doesn't seem to fix anything. And outside of like very few things, I don't see anything really changing. The meta is gonna just stay the way it is, and it's a little bit annoying to build decks in. You build a deck to kill Ari Kennen because you face that every game or like every 2 games, and that deck, sure, you can deal with them, and then you end up having no way to deal with Pantheon, right? And then you have a Pantheon that you're gonna see all the time as well. So those 2 decks kind of have like total opposite ways to deal with them, and they're very common in the meta at the moment. So you're just kind of at a loss when you're building a deck, right? Like, you need a bunch of efficient, cheap removal to deal with Ari Kennen. Efficient, cheap removal does absolutely nothing to Pantheon and his stuff. So you want to kill Pantheon, you need stuff that kills his units or silences his units, and that stuff doesn't really do anything to Ken and Ari because they just nopify and deny any big spells, and then you spent your whole turn and they just cast a bunch of shit that costs 1 and 2 mana and kill you. I guess another thing I also want to rant about is the Master's Ladder seems a little bit stupid. There's no decay, so there's people on the ladder. I've just been kind of watching it, looking for any new decks to pop up so that I can try them out or get some good ideas, and it's basically the same people in the same spot with the same LP that haven't played in weeks. Like, there was the guy that piloted Zillion Echo to the top. He hasn't played in over a week, and he's just going to sit there and be like top 10 to top 20 by the time the seasonal comes around and gain a huge advantage, and I think that's super stupid. You should decay at some rate. I don't know what rate the decay should happen, but, you know, the ladder is significantly harder to climb when the meta is solved. Like, climbing the ladder at the start of a season when no one's climbing is the easiest because most people are messing around with stuff and having fun, and the real competitors are still just, you know, taking their time to get there. And when the meta's not solved, if you find a good deck, which, you know, kudos to him. The Zillion Echo deck was awesome. However, right now, it's not. Like, I don't know. You're not going to climb the ladder with that deck to rank 1. You know, there's no way. People know how to play it. At the time he climbed, nobody knew what was going on. So, you know, he surprised them. I'm not sure if he's the creator of the deck. If he's the creator of the deck, then, you know, good to him. But it just feels a little cheesy that you can just climb to the very top and then sit there and you don't decay and you just wait for a huge advantage at seasonals, while everybody else that's, you know, trying to experiment and actually play their game is, you know, at the mercy of people solving the meta, and then you end up in these rock paper scissors games, and every other game is like, you know, Pantheon, Ari, or with the occasional Darkness. Feels kind of dumb. I think you should have to play at least some way. I don't know what the decay rate should be. It shouldn't be too steep. You shouldn't get punished because you couldn't play for a couple days. Like, it shouldn't be like, you know, you go from 400 to 200 in a couple days or anything. Sure, but it shouldn't be 0. So you should always have the pressure that you need to climb, right? We're talking about the top of the ladder here. Being able to just cheese your way up to the top of the ladder. Although, yes, not everyone can do it. It's difficult. I agree. It's not that I'm saying it's not. I just think that it's a little corny that you can just get a ton of LP by abusing the newest and greatest deck before anyone else does, and then just sit there and basically ride it out till a tournament comes, and now you have a massive advantage, not only in seeding, in the amount of losses you can take. Just feels dumb, feels like an oversight. I think that they should add some sort of rank decay to keep people from just sitting there. With that being said, have yourselves a wonderful day, and T-Dot out.